Hello. Let me start by saying, I never thought I'd be that guy. You know, the one posting about his marriage falling apart on the internet. But here I am, sitting in my car outside the coffee shop where I just got a call that has changed everything. I'm Tom, 38 years old, married for 10 years to Sarah, 36. Sarah and I met through mutual friends, and what we had seemed perfect. She was kind, smart, and effortlessly charming. Our relationship was what everyone called goals, or so I thought. A few months ago, Sarah started taking yoga classes. She said it was her way to de-stress and take care of herself. I supported her 100%. I even encouraged her to sign up for a membership at this high-end studio downtown. It wasn't cheap, but I figured she deserved to treat herself. First, it seemed great. She was happier, more energized, and honestly looked fantastic. She couldn't stop talking about the classes, the stretches, and most of all, the instructor, Ethan. He's amazing, she'd say. He's so encouraging and really knows how to push you without making you feel overwhelmed. I didn't think much of it. I mean, the guy was a yoga instructor. In my head, he was just some granola-eating dude who probably preached about mindfulness and veganism. But looking back now, there were signs. Little things. Sarah started spending more time at the studio, sometimes going to special evening classes or weekend workshops. She bought a ridiculous amount of yoga gear, designer leggings, mats, essential oils, the works. Felt excessive, but I shrugged it off. Then there were the changes at home. Sarah became distant, always glued to her phone or making excuses to stay late at yoga. I'd ask her about her day, and her responses felt hollow, like she wasn't fully present. She'd laugh it off, saying I was imagining things. "You're just jealous you're not as bendy as me," she'd joke. I laughed too. I mean, what could possibly happen at yoga? Turns out, a lot. The first real crack in the facade came one Friday night. Sarah was at one of her yoga workshops again, and I decided to surprise her with her favorite Thai takeout. It had been a while since we'd spent quality time together, and I thought it'd be nice to wait for her at home with dinner ready. Her class was supposed to end at 8 p.m., and by 9:30, she still wasn't home. I texted her, "Everything okay? Got Thai waiting for you." She didn't reply. That wasn't unusual. Sarah always claimed she liked to keep her phone on silent during yoga to stay in the moment. But by 10:15, I was worried. I called her, and she picked up after a few rings, her voice breathless and uneven. "Hey, sorry, class ran over. Ethan wanted to do a bonus meditation session for those who stayed behind. You sound winded. You all right?" I asked. "Oh yeah." She laughed a little too nervously. "We did a killer sequence. I'm exhausted. I'll be home soon." Something felt off. She didn't sound like she'd just come out of meditation. She sounded like she'd sprinted a mile. But I let it slide. I told myself I was being paranoid. When she finally got home around 11, her hair was slightly damp, like she'd just taken a quick shower. She kissed me on the cheek, thanked me for the food, and acted completely normal. If anything, she was overly affectionate, chatting about how incredible the workshop had been and how Ethan's teaching just keeps getting better and better. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But there was this nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach that wouldn't go away. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling while Sarah slept soundly beside me. For the first time in years, I felt like I didn't really know my wife. The next morning, I decided to check her Instagram. Sarah was always posting pictures of her yoga sessions, her progress with poses, inspirational quotes, selfies with her new yoga friends. But as I scrolled through her feed, I noticed something strange. There were no pictures from the workshop the night before. Nothing about the killer sequence she'd supposedly done. It wasn't like Sarah to miss a chance to document her progress or tag Ethan with some gushing caption. Instead, there was a single post from earlier that afternoon. A close-up shot of her mat, a water bottle, and the caption, "Getting grounded before the weekend dizzy." The timestamp? 2:34 p.m. That meant she hadn't posted anything all evening. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe she was too tired to post. Maybe she just wanted to live in the moment. But deep down, I knew something didn't add up. Still, I didn't say anything. Not yet. I decided to keep watching, waiting for something more concrete. It didn't take long to find it. The next week, Sarah was back to her usual schedule: work, yoga, and more yoga. I wanted to trust her, but the unease from that Friday night lingered. I found myself paying closer attention to her habits, her words, even her silences. One evening, as we sat on the couch after dinner, Sarah was scrolling through her phone while I flipped through channels. Out of the blue, she let out a soft laugh. "What's funny?" I asked, glancing at her. "Oh, just Ethan. He sent this ridiculous meme in the yoga group chat." She tilted her phone slightly, showing me a picture of a cat doing a downward dog pose. It was harmless, but something in her tone caught my attention. A lightness, an ease I hadn't heard in her voice when she talked about me lately. "Ethan's a funny guy, huh?" I said, keeping my tone casual. "Yeah, he's great," she replied without looking up. A few minutes later, she got up, claiming she was tired and heading to bed early. As soon as I heard the bedroom door close, I couldn't resist. I picked up her phone from where she'd left it on the coffee table. I hesitated for a moment, my thumb hovering over the screen. I'd never been the kind of guy to snoop, but something about Sarah lately felt off, like she wasn't the same person I married. The phone was locked, of course. I sighed, placing it back on the table. But then I noticed something. Her laptop was open on the dining table. Sarah rarely used it, but when she did, she almost always forgot to log out. I walked over, feeling my heart pound with every step. Sure enough, the screen lit up, revealing her email inbox. Most of it was junk or work-related, but one name caught my eye: Ethan. There were a handful of messages from him, most of them about class schedules or yoga workshops. But one subject line made my stomach drop: "Last night." I clicked on it, my hands trembling. The email was brief, but it said everything I needed to know. "I can't stop thinking about you. The way you looked last night, perfect. Counting down the hours until our next session." I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. My mind raced, trying to process what I was seeing. This wasn't just a friendly instructor-student relationship. This was intimate, secretive, wrong. I scrolled further and found more emails. Some were innocent enough, discussing yoga poses and meditation techniques. But others were laced with flirtation, compliments, and subtle innuendos that made my blood boil. My hands clenched into fists. I wanted to storm into the bedroom and demand answers. I wanted to yell, scream, something. But I stopped myself. If Sarah was hiding this, I needed more than just a few emails to confront her. I needed proof. So, I took screenshots of everything, saving them to a folder on my phone. Then I closed the laptop, making sure everything looked exactly as it had before. That night, I barely slept. Lying next to Sarah, who snored softly and looked so peaceful, I couldn't shake the image of Ethan's words from my mind. "I can't stop thinking about you." The betrayal burned in my chest like fire. But I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I needed to know just how deep this went, and how far I'd be willing to go for revenge. By the next morning, I had a plan. If Sarah was lying to me, I needed more than emails. I needed undeniable proof. Something she couldn't twist or dismiss. That day at work, I spent my lunch break researching hidden cameras. There were dozens of options. Tiny devices disguised as clocks, phone chargers, even smoke detectors. I settled on a small camera designed to look like an air freshener. Discreet, easy to install, and with motion detection. Perfect. That evening, I told Sarah I'd be working late the next few nights on a big project. "Don't wait up," I said with a smile that I hoped didn't betray the storm raging inside me. "Okay," she replied, barely glancing up from her phone. "Good luck with your project." The next day, while she was at work, I installed the camera in the living room, right above the bookshelf. It had a clear view of the couch, the coffee table, and the front door. I also placed another in the bedroom, hidden among a cluster of decorative candles on her nightstand. Felt wrong, invading her privacy like this. But I reminded myself that she was the one who had broken our trust. If she was sneaking around with Ethan, I needed to know. Over the next week, I checked the footage obsessively. Most of it was mundane. Sarah watching TV, scrolling through her phone, or doing yoga stretches in the living room. But then, 3 nights later, I struck gold. It was around 8:30 p.m. when the motion detector caught her pacing the living room, phone in hand. "Are you sure it's safe?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. There was a pause as she listened to the person on the other end. I couldn't hear their response, but I didn't need to. "Okay, fine. I'll meet you there in 30, she said before hanging up. She grabbed her gym bag, her yoga bag, and slipped out the door. I checked the timestamp. 8:42 p.m. She didn't come back until after midnight. When I reviewed the footage from the bedroom camera, I saw her quietly sneaking in, her hair slightly damp and her cheeks flushed. She slipped into bed without even turning on the light, as though trying not to wake me. The next morning, I casually asked, "How was yoga last night?" She hesitated for a split second, just long enough to confirm my suspicions, before replying, "Oh, it was great. Ethan had us try this new flow. Totally wiped me out." I nodded, hiding the anger bubbling under the surface. Now I had proof she was sneaking out, but I still didn't know where she was going, or what she was doing. It was time to escalate. That evening, I installed a GPS tracker on her car. It was a simple device that synced with my phone, allowing me to see her location in real time. If she was meeting Ethan, I'd know exactly where. And once I did, there would be no turning back. The GPS tracker proved its worth almost immediately. The very next evening, Sarah claimed she had another late-night yoga class. "Ethan's trying out a new night flow," she said casually, pulling her mat out of the closet. I nodded, playing along. "Sounds intense. Let me know how it goes." As soon as she left, I pulled up the GPS app on my phone. Her car pinged its location every few seconds, showing her driving toward downtown. I expected her to stop at the yoga studio, but she didn't. She kept going, eventually pulling into a small parking lot behind a boutique hotel. My stomach churned. A hotel. I sat there, staring at the screen, debating what to do next. Part of me wanted to jump in my car, drive to that hotel, and catch her in the act. But another part of me, maybe the calmer, more strategic part, knew I needed more. A confrontation without evidence could backfire, and I wasn't about to let her talk her way out of this. I waited in agony, watching her car's location remain static at the hotel for over 2 hours. When she finally started moving again, it was nearly midnight. The next morning, I decided to test her. "How was class last night?" I asked as she poured her coffee. "Oh, amazing," she said without missing a beat. "Ethan really pushed us with some partner stretches. My thighs are killing me." "Partner stretches, huh? Sounds fun," I said, forcing a smile. She nodded and laughed. "You should join us sometime. I bet Ethan would love to meet you." The audacity of her lie made my blood boil. She was good at this, effortless, convincing. But now I had her routine mapped out, and I wasn't going to let it slide. I decided to take things further. That night, while she slept, I opened her phone using the passcode I'd guessed from watching her type it in. My heart raced as I scrolled through her messages, and sure enough, there were dozens of texts between her and Ethan. They weren't just flirty, they were explicit. "Ethan, can't wait to see you tonight. Room 206, same as last time." "Sarah, me too. I'll wear that black set you love." My hands trembled as I read their conversation. I felt sick, like the floor had been ripped out from under me. She wasn't just sneaking off to see him. She was meeting him at a hotel I'd unknowingly paid for through her yoga membership and workshop fees. That was the breaking point. I knew I had enough to confront her, but I didn't want a simple argument. I wanted her lies, her betrayal, her entire house of cards to come crashing down in the most spectacular way possible. So I called a lawyer. After finding those texts, confronting Sarah right away felt tempting, but I held back. I didn't want her crocodile tears or empty apologies. I wanted this to end on my terms, and I wanted to make sure her betrayal came with consequences. I spent the next week quietly preparing. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Allison, immediately understood my goals. "I don't just want a divorce," I told her during our first meeting. I want to make sure everyone sees her for who she really is. Allison nodded, her eyes glinting with a mix of professionalism and sympathy. If she's been unfaithful, and you have proof, we can leverage that to protect your assets. But if you're looking for public accountability, that's a different ballgame. Are you sure you want to go down that path? Absolutely, I said. She's humiliated me in private. I want her exposed in public. With her help, I compiled everything. The screenshots of their texts, the hotel footage from my GPS app, and the video clips from the hidden cameras. Allison assured me it was more than enough to prove infidelity in court. But I wasn't done. Using the GPS tracker, I started following Sarah more closely. Over the next few nights, I gathered more evidence. Photos of her car parked outside the same boutique hotel, timestamps matching her messages to Ethan, and even receipts I'd found in her email for yoga retreats that were really weekend getaways with him. The piece de resistance came on a Saturday afternoon. Sarah told me she was heading to a yoga community event. I waited a few minutes, then checked her location. As expected, she wasn't at any event. She was at Ethan's house. I drove by and parked down the street, camera in hand. Sure enough, there was her car in his driveway. I waited. After about an hour, the front door opened. Sarah stepped out, laughing, with Ethan right behind her. He wrapped his arm around her waist and kissed her on the cheek before she got in her car and drove off. The fury I felt in that moment was indescribable. But I stayed calm. I had the photos. I had the proof. That night, I reviewed everything I'd collected, making sure it was airtight. I also started planning how to reveal it all. I wasn't just going to serve Sarah divorce papers. I was going to make sure Ethan, their yoga community, and everyone else in our lives knew exactly what she'd done. It was time to put my plan into action. Over the next few days, I acted like nothing had changed. I smiled at Sarah, made small talk at breakfast, and even asked her about her yoga sessions as if I weren't sitting on a mountain of damning evidence. It was exhausting, pretending everything was fine when my mind was consumed by thoughts of betrayal and revenge. But I knew I had to play my role to perfection if my plan was going to work. Meanwhile, I kept refining the details. I wasn't just going to confront Sarah. I wanted to hit her where it hurt the most, her reputation. She loved being the center of attention, the envy of her friends, the perfect wife with the perfect life. I was about to destroy all of that. I started by creating a group email. I added everyone who mattered to Sarah. Her closest friends, her parents, and even some of the people from her yoga studio. Then, I carefully drafted a message that would deliver the blow. The subject line? The truth about Sarah and Ethan. The email was short but powerful. Dear all, I wanted to take a moment to share something important about my wife, Sarah, and her yoga instructor, Ethan. Over the past several months, they've been having an affair behind my back. I've attached proof of their infidelity, texts, photos, and videos, for anyone who doubts the truth of my claims. This has been the most painful experience of my life, but I believe those closest to Sarah deserve to know who she truly is. Thank you for your understanding, Tom. I attached every piece of evidence I had, the screenshots of their texts, the hotel GPS data, and even a short video compilation from the hidden cameras. Nothing was left to interpretation. But I didn't send it. Not yet. I wanted one more piece to complete the puzzle. A confrontation that I would secretly record. Something raw, something undeniable. That Friday, I set everything in motion. Hey, I said casually as Sarah walked into the living room after dinner. Are you free tomorrow night? I was thinking we could have a date night. Maybe dinner and a movie. She hesitated, her eyes darting to her phone. Oh, tomorrow? I actually have a late yoga session. Ethan's running one of his special workshops. Of course, I said with a smile that masked my rage. Yoga always comes first, right? She laughed and kissed me on the cheek. You're the best. As she walked away, I clenched my fists. Tomorrow, everything would change. The next evening, Sarah left the house dressed in her favorite black yoga set. The one Ethan loved, according to the texts. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek and said, "Don't wait up. These workshops can go late." I smiled, watching her walk out the door, but the moment it shut behind her, I sprang into action. I pulled up the GPS tracker and saw her heading straight for the boutique hotel. No surprise there. I grabbed my car keys and drove off, parking down the street from the hotel a few minutes after she arrived. Her car was already in the lot, parked next to Ethan's sleek white Tesla. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the hotel. My heart was pounding, my palms sweaty. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading and anticipating all at once. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and stepped out of the car. The lobby was quiet, but the front desk clerk barely glanced at me as I walked through, pretending to scroll on my phone. I knew the room number, 206, from the texts. I took the stairs to avoid the elevator, my footsteps echoing in the empty stairwell. When I reached the second floor, I paused outside the door to room 206. I could hear faint laughter and muffled voices from inside. My chest tightened with rage, but I forced myself to stay calm. I knocked. The voices stopped. There was a moment of silence. Then footsteps approached the door. When it opened, Ethan stood there, shirtless, his hair tousled like he just rolled out of bed. "Tom!" His face went pale as he recognized me. "Where's Sarah?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. I think you've got the wrong." Before he could finish, I pushed past him into the room. Sarah was sitting on the edge of the bed, her eyes wide with shock. She was wearing nothing but a hotel robe, the belt loosely tied around her waist. "Tom!" she gasped, jumping to her feet. "What are you doing here?" I held up my phone, the camera still recording. "Catching you in the act," I said coldly. "Smile for the camera, Sarah." Her face twisted with panic as she realized what was happening. "Tom, it's not what it looks like. Save it," I snapped. "I've got the texts, the hotel receipts, the GPS data, and now this. Don't you dare try to lie your way out of this." Ethan looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole. "Tom, man, let's talk about this." I turned to him, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Shut up, Ethan. You're nothing but a joke. I trusted you. I thought you were just some yoga guy trying to help my wife relax. Turns out you were helping yourself to my wife." Sarah started crying, but I didn't care. "You lied to me," I said, my voice breaking. "You lied to my face, over and over again. All those yoga sessions, all those workshops. You were here with him." She tried to step closer, but I held up a hand to stop her. "Don't," I said. "Don't you dare touch me." I turned to Ethan one last time. "You should have stuck to teaching downward dog." With that, I walked out, leaving them standing there in stunned silence. Back in my car, I stopped the recording and uploaded the video to the email draft I'd prepared. My hand hovered over the send button for a moment, but then I pressed it without hesitation. The truth was out. The next morning, chaos erupted. By the time I woke up, my phone was buzzing nonstop. The email I'd sent had spread like wildfire. Friends, family, and even a few people I barely knew were reaching out. Some in shock, others in disbelief, and a handful to offer their support. Sarah's parents called me repeatedly, leaving voicemails that alternated between anger and pleading. Her mother's voice cracked as she said, "Tom, this can't be true. Please tell me this is some misunderstanding." I didn't reply. There was no misunderstanding. Around noon, Sarah came home. I was sitting in the living room, calmly sipping coffee as she stormed in, her face blotchy and tear-streaked. "Tom!" she yelled, slamming the door behind her. "What the hell did you do?" I set my coffee down and looked at her, my expression blank. "What I had to. You humiliated me," she screamed, her voice breaking. "My parents, my friends, my coworkers, they've all seen it. You've ruined me." "No, Sarah," I said, standing up. "You ruined yourself. I just made sure everyone saw the truth." She tried to argue, her voice frantic and desperate, but I cut her off. "You lied to me, for months. You sneaked around, humiliated me, and now you want to play the victim? You don't get to do that." Tears streamed down her face, and for a moment, she looked like she might collapse. "I was unhappy, Tom," she sobbed. "I didn't mean for this to happen. But But Ethan made me feel alive again. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Alive, I repeated, my voice cold. Do you have any idea what you've made me feel? Every time you lied to my face. Every night you spent in his bed while I waited at home, trusting you. She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. Save it. I don't want your excuses or your fake apologies. I've already spoken to my lawyer. You'll be hearing from her soon. Her eyes widened in panic.
Tom, no.
Please, we can fix this. We can go to therapy. I'll cut things off with Ethan. I already did. Please, don't throw everything away. I laughed bitterly. Therapy? You didn't care about fixing things when you were sneaking off to hotels. Don't insult me by pretending you care now. She broke down completely, sinking to the floor and sobbing uncontrollably. I felt no pity, no remorse, just a cold, hollow satisfaction. Before she left, she muttered something under her breath. You're cruel. I didn't respond. I just opened the door and gestured for her to leave. Once she was gone, I sank onto the couch, exhausted but resolute. This wasn't over yet. The fallout wasn't limited to Sarah. By the next day, word had spread through the yoga community. Ethan's studio became a ground zero for gossip and outrage. Several of the people who received my email forwarded it to their friends and others in the yoga circle. Parents of students were horrified that their beloved instructor, someone they trusted, was sneaking around with a married woman. Ethan's Instagram, once filled with glowing comments and admiration, was now a battleground of angry messages. You're a disgrace, one comment read. Cheating with a married woman? And you're supposed to preach mindfulness and integrity? Hypocrite. By midday, his studio issued a statement on social media. We are aware of recent allegations involving one of our instructors, Ethan. We take these matters seriously and are conducting an internal review. Effective immediately, Ethan is on indefinite leave. I couldn't stop the small smirk that spread across my face when I read it. Indefinite leave? That was corporate speak for, we're getting rid of you as soon as the dust settles. I wasn't done yet. I took the photos I'd snapped of Sarah and Ethan leaving his house together and sent them anonymously to the studio's biggest competitors. I knew they'd seize the opportunity to bury him further. Sure enough, within hours, a rival studio posted a not-so-subtle ad on Instagram. Looking for a yoga studio with integrity? Join us for classes where trust and community matter. Ethan's reputation was in tatters, and his source of income was rapidly slipping away. I imagined him scrambling to salvage what was left of his career, but there was no coming back from this. That evening, I got a call from Ethan himself. Tom, it's Ethan, he started, his voice tense. I know who it is, I replied, my tone icy. Look, man, I don't want any trouble. I just want to talk. Oh, now you want to talk? You didn't seem to care about trouble when you were screwing my wife. He sighed heavily. I made a mistake. I admit that, but you didn't have to go nuclear. You've destroyed my life. Good, I said without hesitation. That's exactly what I intended. He tried to argue, his voice growing more desperate. You don't understand, this could ruin me. I have clients, a reputation. And I had a marriage, I snapped. You didn't think about ruining my life. So why the hell should I care about yours? There was a long pause. Finally, Ethan muttered, You're a vindictive bastard. You know that? I'm whatever you made me, Ethan, I said calmly before hanging up. As I put the phone down, I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. Ethan was learning what it felt like to have everything crumble around him. But my revenge wasn't over yet. The day after Ethan's call, I decided to take things to the next level. The damage to Sarah and Ethan's reputations wasn't enough. I wanted their betrayal etched into the memories of everyone who mattered to them. I created a video compilation of the evidence. Clips of Sarah sneaking out, photos of her car at the hotel, the texts between her and Ethan, and the footage of my confrontation in room 206. I even added captions just in case anyone missed the point. The piece de resistance was the text overlay at the end. Trust is earned. Betrayal is unforgettable. I uploaded the video anonymously to a private YouTube account and shared the link on a few local forums and social media groups tied to Sarah and Ethan circles. I titled it, "When Yoga Sessions Get Too Personal." The video exploded almost instantly. By noon, I'd overheard coworkers discussing it. "Did you see that video about the yoga instructor? Man, people are wild these days." Someone even sent me the link, not realizing I was the one behind it. Within hours, the video had thousands of views, and the comments section was on fire. Imagine being this shameless. Yikes. Ethan's whole career is over, and Sarah deserves it too. I can't stop watching. It's like a train wreck you can't look away from. Sarah's phone started ringing off the hook. Friends, family, and even acquaintances were calling her. Some to scold, others to pry for details. She came home from work in tears, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. "You made a video?" she shrieked, storming into the living room. I didn't even look up from the book I was reading. "I did." "Why?" she screamed, her voice raw. "Isn't it enough that you emailed everyone? Do you have to humiliate me even more?" I set the book down and looked her in the eyes. "Did you stop to think about how humiliating it was for me to find out my wife was sneaking around with some yoga instructor? No? Then don't expect me to care now." She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But only for a moment. "I lost my job because of this," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They said the studio can't have someone with this kind of attention working there." I raised an eyebrow. "Good. Maybe you can focus on being honest for once in your life." She looked up at me, her tear-streaked face a mix of anger and despair. "You've destroyed me, Tom. You've destroyed everything." I leaned forward, my voice cold and unrelenting.
No, Sarah.
"You destroyed yourself. I just let everyone see it." She left the house that night, slamming the door behind her. I didn't care where she went. This was only the beginning. A week after the video went viral, Ethan's studio officially announced his termination. His clients had vanished, his classes were empty, and his reputation was beyond repair. Sarah, now jobless and ostracized, called me several times, begging me to take the video down. I ignored her. One afternoon, I got another call. From Ethan. His voice was shaky, almost pleading. "You've ruined me, Tom. Everything I've worked for is gone." "That's what happens when you destroy someone's marriage," I replied, cold and unbothered. He tried to argue, but I hung up. I didn't need his excuses or guilt. Ethan was reaping what he sowed. The revenge was working, but it wasn't over yet. Sarah showed up at the house late one night, disheveled and tearful. "Tom, please," she begged. "Take the video down. I can't even leave the house without people whispering."
Ist der her unmovid?
"You didn't care about humiliation when you snuck around with Ethan. Why should I care now?" She dropped to her knees, sobbing. "I made a mistake, but you've destroyed my life. I have nothing left." "You chose this, Sarah," I said firmly. "Live with it." She stayed there for a while, pleading, but I eventually told her to leave. I didn't feel pity, only the satisfaction of knowing she finally understood the weight of her actions. With everything unraveling for Sarah and Ethan, I finalized my divorce strategy. My lawyer, Allison, had already filed the papers, citing infidelity with irrefutable evidence attached. Sarah tried to contest the terms, claiming she deserved half of our assets. But the video, texts, and GPS data destroyed her argument in court. The judge awarded me nearly everything, the house, savings, and even the car she once loved so much. Ethan, meanwhile, was hit with a lawsuit from one of his former clients who accused him of unprofessional behavior. He was drowning in legal and financial ruin, just as I'd planned. Justice wasn't just served, it was overwhelming. Months later, life felt lighter. The divorce was finalized, and Sarah was out of my life. I sold the house and moved to a new city, far from the memories of her betrayal. Ethan's studio remained shuttered, his name a joke in the yoga community. Sarah faded into obscurity, her once perfect reputation permanently shattered. I wasn't bitter anymore, I was free. If there's one lesson I learned, It's this: never ignore your instincts. Trust isn't just a foundation for a relationship. It's everything. Revenge doesn't rebuild what was lost, but sometimes it helps you close the door for good. Bye-bye.